They say hunting and fishing can be dated back more than 2 million years. Throughout the years, the historic angler and hunter has steadily evolved into the avid hunter and angler that we know and love today. Welcome to the Outdoor Defiance podcast. As you listen, you will hear comical stories, companies talking about their products, researchers talking about their research, and overall ways to help you become a better outdoorsman. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome, guys. Welcome back to episode 8. And I'm very excited about this week. If you guys know anything about Oklahoma and Oklahoma deer hunting, I have two of the probably most famous faces in the last few years with me, which one of them's kind of stuck with me as he's my co-host and co-founder. And the newest one to the face, shooting absolute giant, non-typical in Oklahoma, Ethan Kile. Ethan, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I love telling this story.
So we're excited about the day. I know Ethan's been asked maybe a million times over a story, and we know how that feels because we went through that, and which I just kind of followed Gunner's shadows, not gonna lie, and I got to tag along with him, and so it's been a ride. So I understand having to tell your story. We're excited to be able to get more in depth in some topics that comes with hunting. Okay, so we're going to talk about some topics like CJ Alexander, Gunner's buck, and I kind of see, if you had some stories that we had with that. Of course, we're going to hear a story, and then we're going to go over some dig deep in some topics right now that people are fighting about. But no further ado, let's jump into it, and let's hear how you kind of got started in the outdoors.
Well, I've told several people this. I didn't really have a choice as a kid. My parents purchased my lifetime hunting and fishing license when I was 6 months old. So they'd be gravely disappointed if I didn't hunt and fish. So
Yeah.
we I was stuck in it at a young age. I remember at 3-4 years old going to Colorado, going to deer camp up there, and following dad around up there in Colorado, and then obviously here in Oklahoma. Been all over the state, deer hunting here. We have had a place out at Shattuck, Oklahoma that we hunted, and then I drew out some WMAs, and then
Awesome.
obviously here in Garvin County. So I've been hunting. I've probably killed my first deer at 7 or 8, and my first turkey at 6. So
Wow. Yeah,
I've
you
been
and
in it from the beginning.
Yeah, you and Gunner kind of started super early, which I was started super early, but I didn't even get to harvest anything until I was like 5th or 6th grade. So
I
no, I
got
think I was in 3rd grade.
I got asked one time. I gave my lifetime. We got checked somewhere, and he's like, you're not 2 foot tall anymore." I'm like, "No," because I had a similar kind of story like that. My dad was, he got me a lifetime fast. So
Well, he probably did it about the time my parents, they did it back then because they always was talk the price is going to go up, which
Yeah.
now it's doubled now from 1994.
So what was the price on the back of yours?
$400.
Wow. And that's for a combo?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think so I bought mine when I was in I want to say freshman or sophomore year in college or high school, geez. And it was $725 just for hunting. And I was gonna buy the combo, but my truck broke down and I needed $200 to fix it in high school. So I just bought the hunting, and I did the math, and the way I hunt, like it was gonna be 6 years. If I would have bought 6 years worth of tags, it would have been paid off. So I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
that's crazy. It's crazy to see how much they jump and how much they continue, which I understand why they do, because you're getting a lot for little, honestly.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth it to anybody who's thinking about it. The price isn't going to go down, so you might as well
Right.
jump out there and get it.
Yeah, and with the way hunting is, we don't know what our tags are gonna do in the next few years, honestly.
That's
So
exactly
you said
right.
you drew out a few hunts. Was that youth hunts or what was that?
It was whenever I was a kid. I drew out a toka. I believe I drew out a toka once. I feel like I've been somewhere else, but I know I went to a toka once. Unsuccessful, but uh, just for the sheer fact of being picky.
Yeah.
But uh, it's cool, being hunting in basically all or three corners of the state. I haven't hunted in your guys' neighborhood, but
We don't have a ton of public land, I guess. I mean, we do around like the lakes and stuff. If you get in around that kind of stuff, and then you can get into a lot of that stuff over there. As far as like private land goes, I really love this area. I mean, Taylor will brag about it too. It's so diverse, and it's just I don't know. I think it's one of the funnest. I mean, I've hunted all around too. I mean, I go out west and all that stuff too, and it's hard to beat Oklahoma hunting.
Oh, it's hard. It's
oh
hard to
yeah,
beat deer hunting. I mean, everyone likes to say they want to kill this, kill that, and I mean, not my only. I'd like to go kill a big elk, big mule deer, and all that. But one of the main things I want to do, bucket list thing, is kill a mature whitetail in all the big states for hunting with my bow. So that's kind
right.
of where I'm at. I mean, there's just something about a whitetail that I mean, you can't beat it. And
No,
everyone's like, once you go west, you'll never look at whitetail hunting the same. And I'm like, man, I don't know.
I've been to Colorado. Like I said, as a kid, I went up there. Uh, well, for probably 10 years in a row, and then I actually got to hunt twice as a kid up there. When you could just buy over the counter youth tags.
Right.
Um, so what again, unsuccessful, but uh, just being up there in the mountains it's super cool.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I laugh because I had oh, what did I have? Oh, had a deer, or I'm sorry, I had an elk tag. Had
Hmm.
an elk tag as a kid, and I'm sitting in this draw by myself, and woke up, have a huge buck down the draw from me, and sitting there with an elk tag, and so things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, it's cool to see, but then my dad's the same way. He's in the other draw, and he's got an elk walking by him, and he's got a deer tag. So
Yeah.
that was a
Go.
funny one that was a funny memory I had, and then in see 2020, I guess that was a COVID year, or 21. I'm sorry, 21. We decided to go. Me and a couple buddies, we all got together and went and drew out elk tags up in Colorado. We went in 21 up there, and I will say that is the absolute hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Was it archery?
Archery, and we
Yeah.
backpacked in, did
Wow.
everything, camped on our back and all that, and that was I'd been working out, been hitting the stair stepper and all that, thinking I was running and thinking I was in shape. I thought I was in shape until about 2 hours after 2 hours after we left the pickup. I was not in shape anymore.
Yeah, we go up there and hike in. Gunner goes up there and hunts elk and mule deer. I never have yet, but we go up there and hike in for fly fishing with our buddy, and I learned fast on some of those trails that I'm nowhere near shape. So I understand that pain.
Yeah,
It's a different kind of in shape. Like where if I'm sure if we were walking up and down that stuff, our whole lives or whatever, it wouldn't bother us near as much. But I
oh
mean,
yeah,
we're not used to that. So we roll up there in that thin air. We're like, this is insane. I
Yeah.
mean, I work out extensively before I go, and it still kicks my butt too.
gonna just add on to that. Yeah, we we walked in. Of course, I had worked nights the night prior, and then drove all the way up there to Colorado, get out of the truck, and then take off hiking. And we set up camp, and then we heard a bull bugle up on above us. So we start humping it up the hill. We're climbing an elk trail, and them elk are amazing. These
Yeah.
elk, I mean, we're going straight up, and we're in a
Wow.
high trafficked elk trail, and it's pretty much straight up. We're on our hands and knees with our bows on our back, climbing up this hill, and we probably gained 1,000 feet of elevation from camp up to where we thought the elk were,
Wow.
and I was I was sick. I was past. It wasn't that I was out of shape. I hit had the elevation sickness pretty quick, and man, I told the guys, I was like, y'all go kill him. I said, I'm gonna hunt my way back down. And after that day, I was okay. The next day I got up, got some rest that night, and got up, and I was okay. But it was just something about, obviously, just you drive from 600 feet elevation to 6,000. It's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably what, 12, 13 hours?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we've talked about going up there, and our buddies that live up there, they go after archery elk every now and then, but they're more of a meat hunter, so they usually go out there as a family and kill 3 or 4 and divvy it up throughout the family to eat, which is awesome. But
Oh
me
yeah.
and Gunner have talked about going up there for archery, and we just haven't done it yet. But Gunner just graduated this year of college, and then I took 3 years out, and then I graduated last December. So we're that's kind of in the things to do. It's kind of hard to sit here and stare at that thing over your. It would be for my right shoulder and not getting into it. But and so before we get into that deer, what was your hunting? What was your deer hunting like in Oklahoma? Like, talk about maybe some of the deer you shot and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and like I said, we had a place out at Shattuck, so that's really where I killed my first deer. My first 3 deer. I'm sorry, my first 3 deer came from our property at Shattuck. Uh, Going out there and hunting it wide open, hunting them big open draws and stuff out there, and got lucky. Like I said, killed 3 small deer. Obviously, I was whatever 8, 9, 10 years old, and then as I got older, that was all with rifle. I never actually bow hunted. I had a bow my whole life. I grew up, with a bow in my hand, shooting anything that I thought resembled a deer, in the backyard and everything else. And don't know how many tips I lost in trees and everything else growing up. But like I said, I got into bow hunting. Really, it was more my dad. He's always bow hunted his whole life, and he was always, telling me, I don't want you going out there if I don't think you can, make a good shot.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't let me go out there until I could at least pull 45 pounds back. That's what, I know the regulations is 40, but his opinion 45 was the minimum.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I got up to where I could go by myself and whatnot, and was unsuccessful. Probably just because I couldn't sit still and moving around,
Yeah.
got busted a lot. And then when I was 16, actually, is when I killed my first buck. I mean, he was an 8 point and might have scored 100 inches.
Hmm.
Might have.
Yeah.
But that was my first archery kill, and I was hooked after that. I mean, there's something about being that close to deer
Yep.
that it jacks you up. It doesn't matter if it's a doe and a fawn. If they're 15 yards from you, you get a little bit of heart race. I don't care who
Oh
you
yeah.
are.
Oh yeah. If you don't, then you're in the wrong sport. So
Exactly.
yeah, I think my first buck, my first archery buck, was like you said, like 100-inch deer, and man, I was pretty old. I mean, I want to say that's probably 2015, 2016. So I don't even know. I take that back. No, that's right. Yeah, my first archery harvest was 2 years after high school, so 2016. And before then, my dad and I and my brother hunted a lot, and we just kind of just muzzleloader and rifle hunted. I didn't know much about archery hunting at the time, and we just had a couple places. We didn't really want to overpressure it, year round, and that's how we felt like it was fair, I guess. And when I started driving in high school, I got my own bow, and I was like, I'm gonna hunt public or hunt here and there. And so yeah, that's kind of what grew me into it. And I think it took me 3 or 4 years to finally harvest my first buck. I shot a couple does and had luck finding them, and I just could not get close enough to a buck, or let me rephrase that, a big buck. And then I don't know
Exactly.
what it was, but this buck came just trotting down this little draw, and he looked huge. And I pulled back and I smoked him. And when he's running off, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've watched him the last 3 nights," and never thought once about shooting him. I don't know what it was, but man, my heart got racing. But I
Yeah,
was once I shot him, I was like, "It's on." And
man, I was the same way. That little buck I shot first, man, I heard something crashing behind me, and I looked over my shoulder, and I just see this little cedar tree shaking. And I thought, oh my, I mean, I started shaking, I thought, oh Lord. Because the area I was in, everybody's seen big deer. And I didn't even have trail cameras out on this property.
yeah,
We just knew there were deer, that type of thing. And so then I see this cedar tree shaking, and I'm shaking, and my God, here we go. And he pops out behind that cedar tree, and he might as well have been a 150. I didn't care. As soon as he stepped out, I drew.
yeah. When that deer ran away, so the year before I shot I've never got him officially scored. He's probably high 180s, maybe low 190s, non-typical with my muzzleloader. And it's not this one, so don't think I'm trying to score that one that high. But the one behind me is my first one I've ever shot that I thought was mount worthy. But this one I need to finish up and get him behind me. But he was huge. I was like, well, I'm never gonna top him, so I'm gonna go to archery. And that's when that was about probably year or two after I started dating my girlfriend that I'm still with. We've been together almost a decade, so that's a long time. Don't want to think about that. But anyways, I started hunting her family land, and none of them really hunted. Yeah, Gunnar, I saw that. And and I shot that. I wish I had him. It's pretty funny. I don't know. He's nothing to even. He's just a 3-year-old. And when I smacked him when he was running off, I was still just shaking like I shot the
Oh,
biggest
yeah.
thing in the world.
I'm a bad person to ask about my first archery buck.
Get
Yeah.
after him.
Yeah,
You
we're
want to hit him.
skipping him. It's a state record. That's his first one.
Uh-uh.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was my first
Oh
archery
my
buck. Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
people are
Oh,
like, they're like,
we were
man,
gonna skip you,
where'd you
Gunnar. That's not
start?
fair.
I'm like, where'd you start? I'm like, where I can never get to again. Like,
Jesus
you
Christ.
know. So yeah, no, for real.
Ooh.
So that wasn't my first archery harvest of an actual animal. I shot a turkey first with a different bow, but it was my first deer with a actual bow. I'd shot when I was younger. My dad was similar. He didn't want me shooting a bow until I could pull one back and everything. So he got me because he wanted me to hunt early season. He got me a crossbow. So when I was little, I hunted with a little crossbow.
Oh
But
yeah.
but then when I could pull back a bow, I went to a bow, and yeah, that was my first
That's incredible.
actual bow
Yeah.
archery kill. So yeah,
Unreal. He started the back. He went the opposite way than most people do. They usually shoot something small and work their way up, not Gunner.
yeah, no.
So
That's incredible.
let's kind of get in the story about the deer sitting over your shoulder. What what year was your first encounter with him?
So in 22, I was cutting hay for my uncle. It's kind of a little side business I got going on days off, and cutting baling hay on this property that I knew he had, and I just never thought to hunt it. Had never had it really. I've been lucky enough. I haven't had a shortage of property to hunt. Just private land and whatnot around the house, and just happened to be nosy that day. Got done cutting hay and decided to go walk around in the timber. Walking around, and I see a ton of deer sign, and I thought, well, okay. So I hit him up about hunting. He said, shoot, go ahead. Nobody's hunting it. Get after it. It's all yours. All right. That's all I need to know. So I just go throw a little Walmart corn feeder and one of my stealth cams up. And this was literally the first deer I got a picture of. 2 days after
Nice.
I 2 days after I set my camera up, I wake up. I went back on nights, working nights, and roll over, and like 2 in the afternoon, roll over and got pictures from my stealth cam, and click on it, and that's the first thing that pops up, and I was like, oh my God, that can't be real. And it was. I had a dozen pictures of him that night, and and it was really amazing
So
to see something like that.
at that point, how big was he, would you think?
That year we were kind of in a drought down here, so I would have to say, man, it was probably he was probably a 200-inch deer without a doubt.
Wow.
But I think he honestly grew from 22 to 23. I think he grew 20 inches. All of his kickers were probably half of what they are now. Um, so he definitely he put on some mass, put on a little bit of inches on his kickers and whatnot. But I think he grew 20 inches over the off season.
So in 2022, when you got the picture, were you like, all right, I'm going after him, or did you think he was too young?
Yeah, you get a 200-inch deer on camera, he ain't too young.
Yeah,
He,
that's what
he
I was
was
kind of thinking.
No, there wasn't no passing him up. If I would have had a chance to take him in 22, I definitely would have. Um, I actually had two encounters with this deer in person in 22. I was with my daughter in early October of 22, and we're sitting in the blind, and it was hot, and all I'd had was nocturnal pictures of him. Wasn't ever thinking I was gonna see him, but the wind was right, so I thought, well, let's go ahead and go in there. And I wanted her to see some deer. Um, at the time, she was 7, so I was like, yeah, let's go in here and let's go see some deer. And so we're sitting there, and I kept hearing something behind us, and I thought, well, and it kept going and kept going, so I just turned around. Wasn't really being stealthy at all. Just kind of turned around, popped the window open, and I'm sitting in a ground blind.
Yeah.
There wasn't any timber really big enough to put a tree stand in, so I'm hunting a ground blind and open the window behind me and look, and him and a small buck are standing 50 yards behind us, and my heart sank. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, there's no way. And I'm watching him. There's no shot. I had no shot. There was brush between us, and all I could see was horns. Uh, I'm through the brush every time he picked his head up, and only thing I could think of was there were some acorn trees back there. And I thought, well, okay, that's what he's going to eat. He doesn't want corn. He wants acorns naturally. I said, all right, I got you figured out, buddy. We watched him leave that night, and he walked out towards where I assumed the bedding area was.
Uh-huh.
I thought, all right, I got it figured out. So I went the next day, moved my blind back to the trail where I thought he would go between those trees, the acorns and the bedding. And so I kind of set up, brushed it all in. I thought, all right, I got him figured out now. Well, probably 2 weeks later, into October, I'm sitting there one evening, and like I said, all been nocturnal pictures that I've had. And I look up, and I can see through the brush. So I moved back. I was probably 30 yards from my feeder, moved back 50, so whatever, 70, 70, 80 yards from my feeder at this point. And I look up, and I see the little buck come out to the feeder from
Hmm.
the total opposite direction. And I was like, no, there's no way. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, he came out right behind that little buck, and they're standing at my feeder, and I'm 70 yards away. And I obviously have no shot. And again, it's so crunchy, so dry. I couldn't get out of the blind. There's no way I could get if I could. There's no way I could have snuck up any closer. So I just had to sit there and bite my tongue and kick myself and watch him walk off into the darkness that night.
Wow.
And after that, that was at the end of October. The last picture I ever seen of this deer was November 9th
Oh,
of
wow.
of the 22 season, and he disappeared from the 9th of November until June of 23.
So when he disappeared, did you figure he was harvested by someone else? Did you go around talking to your neighbors? What'd you kind of do during that time, or just kind of pray to the deer gods?
Well, I didn't talk to anybody about it just because I really thought just in my gut, there's a highway here that he's buying. I was like, man, somebody ran him over and picked up the horns, and he's who knows where,
Yeah.
in he's in somebody's garage somewhere, and that ran him over, and I'll never see him again. Obviously, never heard anybody shooting him. I mean, a deer like that you're going to hear about
Yeah.
just
Absolutely.
through the grapevine, and nobody had talked about shooting him. So I was like, well, maybe there's a chance. There's always a chance.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really talk about it, didn't ask anybody about it. And then, like I said, and I'd pretty much wrote him off. Matter of fact, I have another a lease. I have another deer lease about 15 miles south of me that I pretty much just started planning on. Well, let's go see what's down there.
Yeah.
This deer's gone, and then come June, and he pops up on camera again, and I thought, all right, here we go.
Wow. So I want to talk about something real quick. In the 22 season, did he have that drop off that side?
Yes, and the sad part is it's kind of deformed now. I think he bumped it in velvet
Yeah.
because it was probably 2 or 3 inches longer in 22.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was a little bit longer in 22, but he bumped it in velvet, and you can kind of see there's a kind of a knot, kind of
Yeah.
a bump there, and made it deformed because it came straight off, came straight, more straight down than it is now.
Yeah, so if you recall me when I was looking at it when you're getting your check at the Backwoods show, I was eyeballing I was just looking at it because I'm very into like how racks like what all they do, and I look for weird stuff. And I did notice that ball, kind of like an acorn on that drop at the beginning, and
Yeah,
that's what I was wondering because when I saw that I was like, man, I don't know if he entered it and it suffered from that or what happened, but I did notice that, so that's crazy.
yeah.
Also, did he have the eye guards? Were they still that massive? And then all the way out to the tip, did he hold the mass all the way through there too in 22?
Man, I think so. Best I can recall in the pictures, he's pretty much the same. I do think he got heavier. I do think he did get a little heavier on his mass as far out as it goes out. Um, I mean he's 5.5 on bases, and he's like 6.5 out there on his fourth measurement.
Wow.
So he got really really heavy. And then the eye guards, I think they stayed about the same.
Wow. And then you were saying 22 is a drought year, and then so 22, 23 season was a drought year, and then going into 23 and 24, was it drought down there that time of year?
No, we had plenty of rain in spring of 23. There was, matter of fact, this year was a bumper crop for acorns down here. Uh, Actually, I think it was statewide. Some of the people biologists and stuff I've seen have said even Oklahoma and pretty much nationwide, deer harvest numbers are down
Yeah.
because of the amount of acorns, and deer aren't coming to fields, and they're not coming to supplemental feed. They're staying back in the timber, and I'll attest to that. I have down on my other property, um, man, I didn't have near the amount of deer coming to corn as I did prior years. So no, in 23, man, we had plenty for them to eat, and I just got super lucky with this deer, and I got him on the ground before the acorns fell because I don't think I would have ever seen him again after that.
So, whenever going into the next year, knowing that it was a wetter year, knowing you had had a year to kind of, take in information on this deer, did you go into the next year with a different mindset, like about how you were going to attack trying to harvest this deer?
I left my setup the same, just
Hmm.
because I knew I'm hunting a super small property.
Yeah.
Um, it's 40 acres, and that pasture, the pasture that I was in is 40 acres, and probably 25 acres of timber
Yeah.
is it. So I had a pretty good idea where he's bedding. I could
Yeah.
narrow it down to narrow it down to 20 acres block of timber, and I knew right where he was coming from. And then across the fence on the neighboring property, there was a small block of timber, and then there's a highway. So I knew he was between my stand and the highway, or he was on the property with me. That's the only two places I've seen him come from. And then surrounding that is all open pasture. So I knew, and there's a pond there, bedding area, and then my setup is in a small clearing that's probably only 30 yards wide and 40 yards long. It was the only clearing that I was hunting, and I left everything the same, just because I pretty much wrote him off, like I said prior
Yeah.
to the summer, and I was just going to see what else was going to come through there. And once I got pictures, I was like, all right, he knows where dinner's at, so
Yeah.
let's keep everything the same. And I left my blind up. I didn't move my blind. Uh, Left everything the same, because a big deer like this, man, the smallest little change
Yeah.
in their surroundings. And I think that's what happened to me the year prior. You know, me thinking I'm smarter than a 200-inch deer. When I picked my blind up and moved it, I think it messed up his surroundings, and he didn't like that. So that's why he changed his patterns when I changed mine, and that screwed me the year prior. But this year, or 23, I left everything the same.
Yeah, that's crazy you said that because remember that drop time buck I was telling you about that I had on camera and disappeared? Um, 3 days before season, I slipped in and put a new stand up in the middle of the day, figuring he wouldn't be around, and then it's like it didn't affect him. And then the first time I went in there, I thought the wind was right. Who knows? He might have been bedding anywhere, and never saw him again. So that's what I don't know if I burned it. I'm pretty cautious when it comes to watching wind and thinking my area. But that deer and then one other deer has educated me that I don't know, and that's exactly a lot of people think they know, but I'm a firm believer that we don't know as much as we think we do.
Well, I catch myself trying to think too hard sometimes, and sometimes you just got to get simple. Play your win, play what you know, and just go out there and hunt them. And I think a lot of big deer don't get shot because we get too cute with it. That's personally, I think.
That's exactly right. Matter of fact, I was watching a podcast where this young man from Kentucky, I believe, he shot a really big deer. Uh, Anyhow, he was in his story. He was saying that um, all of his trail cam pictures, that deer was looking at his tree stand when he came out, and that same thing happened when he goes in there in a early season. He's setting up there. As soon as that deer steps out into the clearing, he turns, looks at him, and turns around and walks off. And he ended up killing that deer because he left that tree stand there and hung another tree stand in a different part of the clearing. And he said the same thing. He said that deer stepped out, looked at that stand, nobody was in it, and he continued out into the opening, and he got him shot.
Well, that's weird. I have a same exact story like that, but I didn't harvest a deer. But I was watching this huge draw, and there was this big, the main tree in that draw. I forgot what it was, but it was real branchy, a lot to it. So we had a stand in it, and for 3 nights in a row, I had this giant 6 point come out, and just he would come out and blow, and I turn around and there he goes. So that, and I mean, 3 nights in a row, clockwork. Okay, the fourth night, I look down there. I'm like, all right, in 10 minutes, he should be here. So I stand up. I get sideways in that tree, and where I can look back where he walks. Here he comes. He stops on top of that hill, looks, doesn't see the outline or whatever he thinks he sees, comes down, and then I totally whiff the shot on
Oh
him.
man.
And we have encores, and my dad's trigger on his is really light, and I was using his muzzleloader that time, and I forgot, and I pulled back the hammer, was coming down on his back again, his shoulder, and barely put my finger on that trigger, and it went off and blew up that cedar tree that was on his back. And I
Oh man.
never saw him again. But yeah, that's the same thing he did. And I remember when I stood up in that tree, I was like, I'm either dumb or this is going to work out. And then it worked out until I failed I failed mine. I failed when it came to time to closing the deal, but, yeah, it's crazy. I haven't heard that story, but I have one just like that. But,
Yeah.
I played, cat and mouse also with another deer, big 8 point at, Blade G2, and, clockwork, same thing, morning. I mean, he was always in this place. I would slip in there, wouldn't see him, he'd be at my other stand. I'd go to the other stand, he would be here. There was times that I left a stand, it'd be 12:30, 12:45, he'd be standing in front of it. So that deer had me figured out way before I ever had him figured out.
That same thing happened to me with this deer. I don't know how many pictures I had. Uh, 10 minutes after 10 minutes. Well, I was just say 10 minutes after. Probably 30 to 45 minutes after I left, this deer would be there. But I mean,
Wow.
it's dark. It's dark. Wasn't nothing I could do about it. But yeah, it would be. He had it. I think he had it figured out. I don't know if it was my pickup or what he would hear, but me walking out of the woods wouldn't spook him. But I mean, 30 to 45 minutes after I left, he'd be there.
Wow. Yeah, these deer are smart. So, let's kinda go back. So you said, June was the first picture you got of him, right?
Yes, sir.
And he was, in velvet, right then and there, like, you knew it was him, though, already in
Oh,
June?
absolutely. I had other pictures of smaller bucks, and it wasn't nothing but just nubs on top of their head. And this deer in June had a full main beam.
Wow.
Uh, he had main beams already, and I knew instantly it was him. And there wasn't no. And then literally the 4th of July, he's already got tines sticking up,
Wow.
um, and the drop tine was defined, and that was on the 4th of July. So there wasn't no doubt in my mind it was him.
So when you got the pictures, did you tell anyone, or did you kinda go zip lip?
Nope. There
No.
was probably up until up until I shot the deer. There was a handful of people maybe that knew about it, because my dad, I showed him the year prior when I first got a picture. I showed him, and he's like, "Don't tell a soul."
Yep. I
He
don't
was
blame you.
like, "Somebody will. I mean, people cut your throat over a deer like this,
Oh, yeah.
and at the least they'll lease it out from under you." So I kept it pretty tight lipped. I even even some of my good friends, you kind of feel bad after the fact, but you're like, I showed a couple good friends pictures. Oh, where's that at? Oh, it's down at the lease. And so everybody, I kind of steered everybody that I did tell. I steered them in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I don't blame you, that's smart, especially with how hunting is right now. So
It
you
is
got your
crazy.
first pictures of him. Was he, did he pretty much have a routine to come in, or, was he just kinda random?
Oh, it was really odd. I got some pictures midsummer of daylight pictures of him, but it was like when he lost his velvet. Um, when he lost his velvet, he went straight nocturnal. Um,
Wow.
up until, so that would say August and September, he was all nocturnal, and then he slipped up the last week of September. He slipped up the last 2 days of September and came in daylight. And I thought, all right, here we go. We got a chance. But bad part of it is I was scheduled to work October 1st.
Oh, no.
So I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, am I going to be that guy? Am I going to be that guy that calls in sick on the first day? And I was like, no, it's going to be like 90 degrees. Like
Mhm.
nothing's going to come out. I'm just going to go to work, whatever. So go to work. And luckily I'd gotten off a little early that day. Um, I got off at 3:30, and I mean, at 3:30, I was out. I was walking out the door. I mean, I was
Yeah.
gone. I was like, I'd already made my mind up. I'd already talked myself up all day. You got to go. You can't kill him on the couch. You got to go. And even though the AC really sounded good after being outside when it was 90 all day.
Yeah.
And anyway, I remember driving home. I think I talked myself in and out of hunting twice in a 15-minute drive home, because I just kept looking down and seeing it's 92 degrees, man. It's like, man, do you really want to go out there and sweat? You're sitting in a hot box. And So I was like, all right, well, let's go. So I just literally rolled in, um, rolled in the driveway, jumped out, grabbed my bow, and threw some camo on the left. I didn't get a flashlight, a backpack, or nothing.
Wow.
I left and roll out there to the property. I didn't get in the blind till 4 o'clock, or probably 10 after 4. So I was already pushing it anyway. Plus, I smell like a goat because I've been sweating all day. I took a bath, pretty much took a bath in some dead downwind, and
Uh-huh.
and just hoping that would help me out. And crawled in the blind, and I was just sitting there just melting, just like, man, there's nothing. And then, sure enough, here come a little doe. She stood out there for 30, 45 minutes, and then here come the little buck that he was running with. It was actually a 6 point. Of all things, this deer to be running with, he's running with a little bitty 6 point. And all summer long, I mean, multiple pictures. He's running with this little bitty buck. It's pretty
Wow.
funny to see. But yeah, this little buck comes out, man. He comes out right at probably 6:30, and I was like, no, there's no way. And I just happened to lean forward and turned and looked, and there he's standing at 50 yards inside the brush. And that taught me a lot. That 10 minutes, or what seemed like 10 minutes, it might have been 5 minutes, I don't know, but it seemed like 2 hours really.
Right.
He's standing there dead still as a statue. I don't even think he blinked for that amount of time. He was watching that little buck's body language. And that little buck, he just came out and was cool and calm, and I guess that was meant the coast was clear. And I'm sitting there. Actually, to go back, we can backtrack a little bit. When me and my daughter seen him the year prior, we were sitting in the blind, and I just instantly started shaking. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's just it's habit. I was shaking so bad, and she's like, why is your arrow moving? Because I was shaking so bad, my arrow was moving. My arrow was shaking in my rest. And she's like, why is your arrow shaking? I was like, baby, I wish you knew.
One
And
day.
so to fast forward to 23, I'm sitting there and the same thing happens. Man, it hits when I see this deer. I lose all control of my functions. I was shaking so bad. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really hope I can pull this bow back, because I just upped it in the off season. I upped it 75 pounds, and I'm like, man, I sure hope I can pull this bow back right now. And matter of fact, whenever he did commit, because I was just looking at my feet, I'd look up, see if he was still there, and I'd look down at my feet, and then I looked up and he was gone. And I look out in front of me and he's standing there at 27 yards. And I didn't have any issues pulling my bow back, because when I jerked it back, I actually he actually heard me draw, or seen me draw, or whatever you want to say, but because he froze and was looking right at me. And my sight on I was shooting a spot hog on my it looked like the size of a Coke can. I was just could
Yeah.
I was just making figure eights and hoping that I'd cross vitals. And when I did, I finally got the pin settled. Of course, this is all taking place in a second, because I rushed the shot. I shoot and I hear something. I hear a smack, and I'm like, all right, I got it. His tail was tucked, um, which I've seen in the past. That's a sign you at least hit them. When
Yeah.
they run off, tail tucked, tail wasn't up, his tail was down. I was like, well, I hit him, and he runs off, and I was like, all right, I didn't give him any time at all, really. Wasn't gonna chase off in the brush after him, but I wanted to find my arrow at least. So I bust out of the blind, left my bow and everything there. I run over there to where he's standing. Like I said, it's only 27-yard shot. Run over to where he's standing, and I can't find my arrow anywhere. I'm like, okay, well, my arrow's in him. I didn't miss it. and I wasn't shooting lighted knocks, which, in my opinion, is a mistake. I switched to
Yeah.
them after that, but anyhow, I wasn't shooting a lighted knock, and so I was like, crap, I don't know where this deer went. And I'm looking around, and I don't see any blood, any hair, anything, but my arrow's gone. So, like, well, all right. So I take a few steps down the trail where he went to, and I find two little bitty pin drops of blood. And I was like, oh no, like my heart sank.
Yeah.
I was like, I hit him, but it's bad. We're never going to find him. Everything went through my head all at one time. And so I just turned around right then and left, pick up my phone. And I called my dad. I'm like, I got it. I got it. I got it. That's all I could get out. That's all I could say. I couldn't even talk, much less.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so shook up, so tore up. And Dad's like, all right, meet me at your house. We'll give him an hour. And which I luckily, I live 2 miles from where I killed the deer.
Uh-huh.
So I roll home, and Dad meets me here, and he's laughing at me, which, I mean, he knew how big it was.
Yeah.
I think he was laughing at me just to break the stress I was in. But he was laughing at me because I'm trying to put batteries in my flashlight, and he said I was shaking so bad I couldn't get my batteries in my flashlight. And I mean, I can't explain it, but anyhow, we give him an hour and go back out there, and we didn't make it, man. Probably 15 yards past where I stopped, and we start finding good blood. Bright red blood. Like, man, I got it. It's good. We're gold. But it was really weird pattern, because it was like probably 30 feet, I guess. Every 30 feet there's blood, and then nothing, and then 20 feet there's blood, then nothing, and it's just little patches. Man, that's kind of weird. And
Yeah.
so there's a dry creek down there, and I was like, all right, he's laying in the bottom of this creek. I got him. So roll over to the edge of this creek. He's not laying there. I'm like, oh my God. So this is probably 150 yards here. And I was like, man, he's not there. Like, oh, just thinking the worst. And then on the other side of this creek's an open field,
Mm-hmm.
which is terrible to track deer.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wide open grass is the worst. I'd much rather be crawling through greenbriers than I would just tracking one in wide open. Anyhow, we get out there, and he was really doing some weird stuff. He was almost zigzagging back and forth. And like I said, we were only finding blood every 20, 30 feet. And then Dad, he's wanting to back out. He's like, man, I think we just need to back out, give him time. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's 90 degrees. This deer, he's not going to make it. If he lays out here for 12 hours in this heat, he's going to be a runt. And there was a small thicket in the middle of this field, and I was like, all right, let's get to that thicket. And if he's not there, if he's not in the middle of this thicket, let's just back out, and we'll give him the night. Sure enough, and we ease over to that thicket, still tracking blood, find a real big puddle of blood before we got there, where it looked like he fell down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're getting closer, And sure enough, the grass was waist high, so I probably got 10 yards from him before I seen him. And when I seen hair, I lost it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, he's down.
Did you do the old Luke Bryan? He's down. Is he down? Is he down?
Oh yeah. I don't even know. I did. I lost it. I hugged my dad. I was freaking cried. I couldn't talk. I was just tore up, man. It was unbelievable. It was just like, I don't know, 100 pounds just lifted off your back.
Yeah.
Almost just like you could breathe. It just felt like I couldn't breathe, the whole time we were tracking this deer.
Yeah.
I was holding my breath. Every time, we'd make it, every time we'd find blood, I'd breathe a little bit more. But when I seen him, man, I lost it. It was
Yeah.
like that Luke Bryan video. I mean, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, I'm with that for about every deer I kill. If or harvest, sorry, people get mad when I say kill, but
Absolutely.
every deer I do. But when I shot that giant, I mean, I watched him go down, and I mean, I screamed like a girl. I guarantee you, my dad heard me, and he was 300-400 yards away. And so yeah, I mean, there's something about that moment that I wish there was cameras on everyone, because that would be an awesome scene just to see that moment in picture. Because I
Yeah.
mean, and that's cool that you were with your dad. That's a special moment in itself, right there. Especially with your history where he told us that you grew up hunting with him. So I'm sure he was almost just as emotional as you though when you found it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he sure was.
So, he was a giant deer. I mean, the pictures are going to speak for itself. But when you walked up, and I'm getting chills even talking, even thinking about it. When you laid your hands on him, what was that feeling?
Uh, I relief,
Yeah,
I guess. Uh, just having the encounters with him, and then just seeing it, and it was just unreal. It really was unreal. Like I couldn't honestly believe it. It was almost just like almost an out of body experience, I guess you
yeah,
would say. It just doesn't seem real that you're holding a 200-inch deer. I know there's people that have killed multiples, but me, the whole time I had this deer on camera and leading up to it and everything, I never did tell myself that that's a 200. Like I
yeah,
just couldn't, I just couldn't just say that that's a 200-inch deer I got on camera. I wasn't that guy. Like I mean, a lot of people talk up deer and whatnot on what they have on camera, but I was the opposite. I was like, man, this deer's going to score 199 7/8. I mean,
yeah.
that's what I honestly thought. Like, there's no way I have that big a deer on camera. And when I seen him in person, I was like, man, there was no doubt in my mind at all what I had.
So you shot him. He went down. You found him. You laid your hands on him. Um, did you start calling friends? What did you start doing after that moment?
So, as we were as we were tracking him, I sent a picture of the blood to one of my buddies. I said, I got him. And so he was calling me the whole time, and I'm just declining the call, because we're out in the we're trying to be halfway quiet, and then I guess he told somebody, and then they told somebody, and I mean, by the time I got to the deers, 5 or 6 people knew about
Oh wow.
it, and so I sent like a halfway decent picture of me holding it. Dad just snapped a picture real quick with my phone, and I sent it to some friends of mine who were on the Buck Ventures pro staff,
Uh huh.
and she FaceTimes me. Whitney Reed, she FaceTimes me. She's with Jeff Danker,
Yeah.
and he's like, "What'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I shot a 200-inch deer." And he's like, "Buddy, I've seen a lot of deer. That deer's well over 200." He's like, "Congratulations." So that was pretty cool.
I'm sure that was super cool. Just kind of leading up to like kind of the stuff that uh, I went through with that whole thing. I bet that first encounter with Danker was like it. I'm sure you knew, but it was also kind of validation after everything you had, gotten to it. You're like, yeah, this is as legit as I believe it is. And then I'm sure the days following that, you were like, yeah, this is kind of insane. Everything
Yeah.
It
that
was. It was
followed from that.
well, and like I mean, as well as anybody. Like you couldn't quit looking at it. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know on your situation with the skull cap and everything. I'm sure you wanted to ride around with it in the passenger seat, didn't want to let go of it.
It was what?
I
So
got a
I
funny
shot
story
mine
about
by
that.
myself. Yeah, I shot mine by myself, but Taylor was like 2 miles away, and so they ended up coming out and helping. That was the original pictures. Taylor took them all. Um, but yeah, my dad started telling people, and a couple people came over, but I mean, it was like it happened so fast, when it happened, and then I posted that picture, and the next day it was like, this is wild, because I still
Yeah,
hadn't fully grasped the situation until people start calling you, and you're like,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
yeah,
let's go back real quick because the next subject, you two are going to get to talk a lot because I want to hear some stuff from both of you. But so you got the deer down. How fast and how quick was like the first like big name in the industry to reach out to you?
Man, the first guy that actually first the first one that reached out to me was a guy, Greg Hicks. He's doing a podcast in out of Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool guy. I mean, I don't know. I guess he follows Oklahoma Bow Hunter. Uh, they grabbed my picture the first night and posted it. Then I talked to that guy and did his podcast a couple days later. And then um, North American Whitetail, they were probably one of the bigger names to reach out first. And then Buckmasters was right there about the same time. Both of them hit me up pretty much back to back, and I did interviews with both of those guys. And then also Field and Stream, and then Field and Stream also did a write up on it, and that was
So
all within like a 2 week, span. So it was
yeah.
yeah.
like Gunner knows. It's like you said, everything happens so fast, and you're just you're answering texts and
Yeah.
messages and everything else, and trying to set up times to do interviews. And it's really wild ride the first few months after harvesting him.
So after you harvested them, all them reached out. Was there ever a time that someone was like, "This is the new state record, non-typical state record"? Did you ever think of that at all?
I didn't honestly think about it until it was a couple days later. Kind of the adrenaline wears off, and of course, all the guys I work with. I went back to work the next day. So I was lucky enough. A friend of mine has uh, a walk-in cooler that we
Mhm.
got him put in a walk-in cooler that night, and left him whole so we could take daylight pictures the next day. So I was really fortunate there that I could get some good daylight photos the next morning or the next afternoon. I'm sorry, but yeah, the next day I go to work and everybody's telling me, "Oh, that's a new state record. That's a new state record." I was like, "I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know." And so we're sitting there at work, and I was scrolling through the Cy Curtis list, and I'm scrolling. I get down to like 9, 10. I'm like, who are all these people? Where do they come from?
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. You got to the Backwoods show. Is that where it was officially scored at?
Yeah, so me and a couple buddies, the day we did our daylight photos, we threw a tape on him, and we went off the Boatmaster. We went off the Boone and Crockett scoring sheet. We got 230 gross, and we were like, all right. I mean, that's probably about the best we can do. So I take him to the taxidermist, and the taxidermist got the same thing. He got 230, and I
Wow.
was like, well, I guess that is what it is. Well, then Buckmasters reached out to me, and they said, hey, we got a guy in Oklahoma City. He's an official Buckmaster scorer. We'll get a BTR score. I thought, all right, that's cool. So I take him up there to Oklahoma City, and this was a couple months ago. Get a Buckmasters BTR score, and they come out 256,
Oh wow.
which shatters the all-time
Yeah,
Oklahoma
absolutely.
record.
Which was at the time, or which is 247 and 7/8 or 240, isn't it somewhere in
Yeah,
there?
something like that. And 247, 246, and I'm like, oh my god, like what do I have? Like I'm getting 230. This guy gets 256. Like,
Yeah.
where am I at? Like, we split the difference. I'm still up there in the top, and which I wasn't too worried about it. I like I said the whole time, like I tried to be humble about it. Like I wasn't, like, oh, I got the new state record. I
Right.
wasn't thinking that, because I knew 246, 245, 244 is like your top three deer, and yeah, he's never going to touch that. So yeah, Oklahoma City Backwoods Show was the first official Boone and Crockett score on him. And man, I stood there with those guys uh, the whole time. It took us an hour and a half to score him.
I can imagine.
And we stood there the whole time, and I didn't really have any discrepancies on what they got, and they got 231 gross. So I got 230, and they got 231. So I just assumed, I said, well, that's what he is.
So he scores 231, and is that gross?
That is the gross. Nets are for fish. So
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
No, I'm with you on that one.
I have a strong feeling on that too. So, but
You
yeah,
know, I just think, the deer, that's the total inches of antler, I mean, he has 231 inches. Why is that not the number we go off of?
yeah.
But anyhow, yeah, he ended up 224 net. The deer only has 7 inches of deduction, which is crazy for a non-typical to have 7 inches deductions.
Yeah, mine had a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Really?
So
Yeah, it did.
let's kind of roll into the next topic about you and Gunner, and we heard the whole story about the deer, and I kind of want to pick your guys' brains. So Gunner shoots his deer. I was the first, second, tied to the first person to be there. Okay, and I get out and I look at this deer, and so Gunner tells me, and everyone's heard this story, but Gunner tells me on the phone when I answer that he shot the 8. Well, I thought he was talking about this giant 8-point he had, right? So I show up, that that arch that you see, I mean, on our hats was sticking out of the grass, and I was like, "Oh my word, that's not the 8." And I remember getting out, and we had this huge celebration, and I remember looking at the deer, and I looked at Gunner straight in the face. I said, "This is a new state record," and I didn't say that because that's how we are. We're not, "Oh, we big deer, big deer." That was when I saw it. I was like, I have never in my life seen something that's not behind a 12-foot, 15-foot tall fence laying on the ground like this, dead.
Yep.
And I just remember just seeing it, like my hair sticking up on the back of my neck, going, "Oh my word, I'm getting to witness this." And like, and then I'm like, "This is my best friend that shot this," and so the emotions were wild. And you talked about the scoring and all that. We went through the same thing. The Backwoods Show was the first show, or first time to get scored. Gunner figures out it's a new state record. Awesome deal. But on the flip side of this, we had some, and I want to tell you a funny story real quick. Gunner was getting all these calls nonstop because I know he wouldn't, because he wouldn't answer or text me back. Well, I had people calling me asking me why he wouldn't answer them. So I'm like over here, like, I don't know, like I'm not, and so it was funny. And another funny backside is when we loaded that deer up, everyone there had a truck, and I was like, "Gunner, put him in my truck." And he's like, "Why?" Because my truck had a bed cover. I said, "We're covering him up. We are not letting anyone know what we have until we get back to your house." Is only 15, 20 minutes from this location. So we rolled him up, and we went. I mean, there was, I couldn't. It looked like probably FBI driving down that road because we were getting home. Because I was like, we are not letting anyone know what we have. So, anyways, so fast forward, we go to the Backwoods Show, but time between, the stories that were made up about this deer were, I mean, unreal. And I'll let Gunner go over that. And but my question is, did you have any crazy stories about your deer? Like anyone making up stuff, trying to knock it off from where it actually came from, or anything like that?
I mean, outside of, Facebook, everybody and their dog wants to just put high fence. It's like, first
Yeah.
thing comes up when you see a big deer on Facebook, high fence, high fence,
Yep.
high fence. This deer, I tell everybody, and I've said it on multiple podcasts and whatnot. This deer was killed. The closest high fence to me is 25 to 30 miles away. So I don't even think that this deer was his genetics even came out of high fence. I don't know where they came from, because we ain't seen any more deer like that. But he was nowhere absolutely near a high fence. That was really my only issue, and I just let it go. I never got into a argument about it. A lot of people asked me, just straight up asked me if I shot it on high fence, just not being facetious, but just saying, hey, where'd you? Because I mean, I've hunted quite a bit. I've traveled around and love being in the outdoors, and everybody knows that, and they just kind of was like, hey, where'd you kill that deer at? I'm like, Garvin County, man. They're
Yeah.
like, there's no way. Like, but as far as made up stories, no, because there was very few people knew about it.
Yeah.
I don't know about Gunner's deer or anything, but very few people knew about this deer, so they couldn't, could bring up all this. Oh, he spotlighted it. Oh, he shot it with a rifle. I mean, matter of fact, I think what squashed a bunch of the stories from the get go. I'm
Hmm.
standing in my driveway the night we get the deer. I'm sitting in my driveway. All my family's here. Um, my wife, daughter, my cousin comes over. We're all looking at this deer in my driveway. Here comes this pickup cruising by, stops, backs up, turns in the driveway. My dad goes, you got him checked in? I said, yeah. He goes, that's game ward. Sure enough, game ward pulls in 30 minutes after I get home with the deer. So I got checked, officially checked, before I even got the deer field dressed.
Yeah.
So that kind of squashed a bunch of stories there.
So one story I heard about you, and I didn't know this was true until Northwest Whitetail released articles. I heard that deer came from city limits, and I mean, Gunner can attest to this. That I text him said I heard that deer shot in city limits with a bow. Just like you hear about like Seek One and all them doing the city hunting in city limits. And I heard the story I was
Oh
told is
no.
that from where you shot him, you could turn around and see a house. You were that close to a house.
Oh, now that is actually a true story. I wasn't in city limits. No, I was a mile, 2 miles outside of town. So close enough, but not in actual city limits of any city.
Hmm.
Um, but no, there was two houses within quarter mile of me.
I was saying like you could turn around and the house
Oh,
was like 20
uh,
foot behind you
oh
situation.
no, no,
Which I'm not knocking the deer. I mean, if I had that set up,
no,
I would have done it. But
Yeah.
that's why I was asking you what stories brought up. And
no. I think where that got skewed was one of the articles got wrote up that I shot him near my home, near my
uh-huh.
house, which, like I said, I was 2 miles from my house. But no, the nearest house to me was probably 400 yards.
Wow, yeah, I didn't know that until Northwest Whitetail came out, and I read it, and I was like, okay, people are, if 40 acres to, in my mind, you killed them off a half-acre plot in town, which, like I said, hey, I'm not knocking it. If I had the opportunity to do like that and it was legal in city limits, do it. I mean, it's legal.
Now I had one guy, I don't remember who it was. They commented, I think it was on that one of the posts about it. Some guy said something about not hard to do when they're behind a fence, and I just commented. It was the only time I commented on anything, and I said no. Matter of fact, I had him tied up since he was a pup, feeding him Cheerios.
That's
That's
classic right there.
that was the only thing that I ever commented back on any of those high fence posts. I said so. But no, it wasn't nothing too crazy. I want to hear Gunner's stories about Gunner's
Yeah.
deer. I want to hear all the wild tales about it.
So okay, the first one of the big ones was we were at the Backwood Show, and Tonto for president at the Backwood
Yeah,
Show. The guy,
yeah.
yeah, he was telling people I shot it off Bob Moore's ranch. Like so yeah, and like we walked up there, and we're like, Tonto, not true.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that didn't happen, Tonto. Taylor overheard people at Brahms saying it was a high fence deer from Kansas that traveled from Kansas
Oh,
all
that
the way
was
to
on social
Oklahoma.
media too. Yeah,
Oh, that
someone
was
said
yeah.
it escaped high fence in Kansas and got to where Gunner shot it in less than 2 days.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is it's kind of like my deer. People ask, where's the nearest high fence? I'm like 30 miles.
Yeah,
And even, I mean, obviously there's no ear tags, there's no holes from an ear tag, nothing like
No.
that. But even if the genetics came from there, I mean, what does it matter? It wasn't the deer,
yeah.
like you said, the deer
He's
didn't
still
travel.
alive.
the deer didn't travel 100 miles in a couple days or 200 miles in a couple days.
I got threatened by an Arkansas University student. You remember that
Uh-uh.
on Facebook on Twitter? You don't remember that? Mason tweeted back at him. He was like, "I wish I could hold you up by your hair and have a god complex."
Oh yeah.
Like he was tweeted at me about that. It was one of those like PETA looking dudes. Like he was
Oh
wanting to
yeah,
rile me
I'm
up
sure
and
I had.
one of those things.
I'm sure I had some of that. Yeah, I had some of that too, but I just scroll through that stuff. I don't.
You can't worry about that. But I don't I don't think there was a couple more. Um, there of course there was the high fence stuff, which we
Yeah.
have a high fence close, but it's exotics.
Yeah, they only do
Right.
exotics. I know the person that runs
It's
it,
not it's
and
not whitetail.
they were gonna do whitetail, but then they saw how expensive it was and never did it. So they just do fallow. And then
Yeah.
another thing, Gunner shot a fallow like what, a year or two later.
Yeah, I
They
shot a
some
fallow
got
deer.
out and shot one. So I had calls going, "Hey, take that down. People are gonna think Gunner," and I'm like, "Let them think." I mean,
I shot it in Hawaii, man.
yeah, I'm like,
You know, the
there's
truth is, I shot that thing out of the same stand I shot the state record out of. That fallow deer
Oh
had been
wow.
escaped for several years,
yeah,
and he was just like he'd showed up on camera like 2 days earlier. I had a big buck I was hunting out there. So I was hunting out there anyway, and I told myself because we knew it was legal. We thought we knew, and after I shot it, we confirmed it again. We knew it was
no,
legal. But
Gunner. Hold on,
people,
you gotta talk about
okay,
that story. Gunner texted me and was like, "So are we sure it's legal to kill a fallow?" You know, and I'm like, "Hold on, let me figure it out." Well, I'm in my stand, not seeing anything, so I get a hold of the game warden. I'm like, "It's legal, right?" And he's like, "As long as it's not tagged, there's no identification on it, and there's not people out looking for it. Yes, it's considered like a wild hog. It's a nuisance." And I
Right.
texted Gunner. During the whole conversation, I texted Gunner and I was like, "Shoot it." And I was like, the guy was like, "Well, let me know if you get it." And I said, "Oh, he just shot it." The guy was
this
like,
thing,
"What?" And I said, I was talking to the game warden, texting Gunner, and I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you told me it's fine." And I told him to do it, and he goes, "No way."
he showed up like 2 days prior on camera, and back in my brain, like I'm thinking, well, if he comes out, I'm gonna pursue this opportunity here. Like, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
if he comes out in bow range, it's like a wild hog. I thought, and then we confirmed it, but I shot him, and I Taylor about fell out of a tree. 'Cause he's like, I cannot believe that happened. But
That's awesome.
and he ran further than the state record buck. I get lucky. I've gotten lucky the last few years with tracking my deer. I watched my deer fall like 20, like 10 steps. So
Man.
I'm pretty lucky in that aspect. I can't even imagine going through what you went through, tracking that
Yeah, we
thing
were
like you had to
actually
track it.
yeah, on Onyx map, I was on Onyx, I was marking blood every time we found blood on the trail, and it ended up being like 256 yards
Wow.
Hmm.
is how far we made it.
Where did you hit him?
So that's the that's the best part of the story. Uh, so I guess when I shot, I know what happened now. I can see it in my head. It's like a still picture in my head now. When I shot, that deer jumped string. When he jumped string, he actually ducked towards me. And when he ducked towards me, the only thing I can think of is when he ducked towards me, that arrow hit him right here
Yep.
and cut his throat.
Yep.
You can see
I told Gunner
right
that
there
was show. Yep.
on that line right there. I hit that deer right there, cut that main artery in his neck. He bled out. That's why our blood trail was every uh 20, 30 feet. It was him bounding every time he hit the ground. He lost blood, and every time he just kept bounding, and that's why the blood was spread out so far.
Wow.
It was
Yeah.
complete luck. I mean, it's better to be lucky than good, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I shot one in
But
the neck this year.
oh,
I really
it's
did.
very
He died, and I got luckier than even you did. Mine died in like 50 yards, like
Wow.
with the next shot. And I was but I hit him right in front of the shoulder, like solid, like
Oh yeah.
smoked him,
Yeah.
and he wasn't going anywhere after that. But I knew I'd pulled left a little bit. I'd been having trouble practicing,
Yeah.
and I was just kind of just gripping too hard, just pulling left, and I pulled left as soon as I shot.
Oh,
I knew I smoked him, but
there's no telling what I did. I like I said, I finally got my pin settled, and when I let go, like I thought, just because after the fact, me thinking I knew I heard a whack,
mhm,
um, but I was thinking I stuck him in that front, that big part of that shoulder, and I
Yeah.
just didn't think I got any penetration until we started finding good blood, and then I thought I made a perfect shot, and then turned out once we got up to him, he actually was laying on the wound, and my dad, we get up there and that opposite side's just perfect. He's like,
did you scare
what
him to
did you
death?
hit him? Yeah, did you scare him to death? And I was like, I don't know. And we rolled him over. We rolled him over and seen that net shot, and I was like, oh my god.
Hey, I don't. It's a fatal shot. Not too
It
many
is a
deer
very
get
fatal
away with
shot.
that shot. I don't
No,
recommend people
Yeah.
shooting it there on
No, no,
purpose,
no.
but I mean, I think it's a better opportunity on a lethal shot than some of the other placements. So
Yeah,
even when it comes to guts
mhm,
and high lung, I mean, I think the neck. I don't know. I'm not going to say too much because people like to get mad on that one too. So another
yeah.
thing, Gunner, we kind of ran into is when people saw the pictures of the deer. Of course, there's a feeder there, and a lot of people want to talk trash on feeders. Have you ran any of that experience of people want to, oh, you killed him over feed or anything like that?
Oh yeah, there was trash talk from the beginning about that. But here's my deal. If it wasn't legal in Oklahoma, I'd be hunting acres or,
Yep.
but it's legal and my neighbors are feeding and their neighbors are feeding and their
thank
neighbors are
you.
feeding.
Yes.
So, okay, so I'm going to take this moral high ground and I'm just going to go throw a stand up in a random tree and hope something walks by. No,
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to supplement. Matter of fact, this deer, from the first picture I got of him in June until I harvested him, I was putting out 50 pounds every 2 weeks of protein through the
Yeah.
summer to supplement some protein for to get better horn growth for not just this deer, but I had multiple bucks. I
Yeah.
have multiple bucks in that area. So, and I've always done that, not just this deer. Years past on other properties, I've always put protein out in the summer to help with horn growth. But
Yeah. There's a,
if you're not doing it, your neighbor is. So,
yeah,
That's
that's me and
yeah.
Gunner's thought is if you're not doing it, I mean, and then everyone's like, "Well, you sit on it," and I'm just like, "You guys are just trying to pick a
See, that's
bone."
the thing. That's the thing. If I'm gonna, so like you said, everybody else is doing it around your fence line. If I mean, there is a world where if everybody stopped feeding corn or whatever, sure, why not? You know, but at the same time, it's like if I'm gonna put corn out, why am I gonna not sit to where I can shoot it? I'm just
yeah,
gonna throw it
exactly.
Yeah,
out and then sit a thousand yards away and watch my target buck sit there and eat all night. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
cruel and unusual
well,
punishment.
on the flip side, if you put some of these people talking about that, if you put them in the stand in y'all scenario, they're going to shoot the deer. Most of the deer aren't the caliber of what you guys hold. People are going to still shoot the animal because I mean, it's this. I don't know if it's people being jealous. I don't, and it's this. People are like, oh, but I can tell you one thing: the corn does not bring big deer in automatically. I mean, if it was the
No,
case, all three of us would be comparing our deer in the background, and we're not. I'm talking to the luckiest people in Oklahoma right now because I've been given an opportunity too. And all these people want to see her and hate, but these people, you hear it from them, but then you have me who's hunted just as long. I mean, you said in '94 you got your lifetime, so I put it together a year older than me, and I'm like, I've hunted just as much as you have, and I have never seen the quality of deer that you've shot. I have never seen the quality of deer that Gunner shot until Gunner shot it. Or, so yeah, you're going to talk to these people, these two, and there was corn feeders involved, but that's not what got the deer. You still had to
No,
be
and
smart. You still had to watch your wind. You had to do all these stuff to outsmart that thing because just like that was stated here, is these two deer um, found ways to get around you when they needed to. So, and I love talking about this because um, it's funny to me how people react. We're supposed to be a team, and they want to just down people like you too. And no,
and
that is dumb, and I have a lot to say to that. So, anyways, my 2 cents is the corn didn't kill the deer. Did it put them in a better situation? Absolutely. But
yep,
it's legal. Everyone else is doing it, so why wouldn't you do it? And
exactly.
that's
And I have deer on my wall. Matter of fact, prior to this deer, my biggest deer before this was 145.
wow.
So, I mean, I haven't just been laying them down, in
Yeah.
my my lifetime. I've been haven't been super picky up until, after high school. I really started, I realized I was like, man, I've killed quite a few deer. I'm gonna just, start raising my standards, and I did. I've shot, I've gotten bigger every year, but still,
Yeah.
my biggest prior was 145, and and so like it wasn't like you said. I've been hunting over corn or around corn, for 20 years, and or however long I've been hunting by myself, and like 145 is my biggest. It's not like,
Mhm.
you just have these giant deer walking out every other day. So like you said, you take anybody and put them in this situation, they're gonna harvest that animal.
Oh,
And
absolutely. That's
the whole legality thing is funny to me because me and my dad, we got the privilege to go hunt some private land in Illinois, and we went up there 2 times, hunting up there. And it's funny, you walk into Tractor Supply in Illinois where it's illegal to bait, and Tractor Supply or Atwood or the local farm store has aisles of deer corn and uh, different proteins and supplements. All, the same stuff that we have here and they have up there, and half of it's missing. I'm like,
I was gonna say, yeah.
what y'all buying this for? Your cows and horses?
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's like the people that, are killing big deer off of big cornfields in Iowa and stuff. They're the same people yelling at us for hunting over corn. You're hunting over a cornfield,
Yep.
Yes.
like it's you can say what you want about it. If it's legal, I'm probably going to take advantage of it. If it's not, I'm not. That's just
Yeah.
how.
That's
So
exactly right.
here's
So
a question I have. What's the nearest ag field to where you shot your deer, Ethan?
This deer particularly, the nearest wheat field is probably probably a mile in each direction. There's wheat. Probably all four directions from this deer. There's a wheat field, and um, so I know for a fact this deer was going to wheat because
Yeah.
my dad swears in January of the year prior in January, he swears he's seen this deer on a wheat field right by my house.
Uh-huh.
So I know they're going to wheat, and I mean you know I've hunted a lot of wheat fields, as I
Yeah.
assume both of you guys have.
Yeah. Well, my question is, Gunner, we do food plots. So yeah, the deer we hunt do have food plots. But the nearest ag, you're talking in it just happens to be closer to him. It's a half a mile. But after that, you're looking 2 to 3 miles, and the one by him gets hammered by cattle. So there's just not a lot to graze on. So what I was saying, what my whole reason to ask that is these people that want to sit here and hound on us for hunting over corn. is Gunner's right. They're hunting over cornfields. We don't have that privilege in a lot of the areas in Oklahoma. We're not in the corn belt. Like you're looking at wheat to grow some cattle on, and you might find some soybeans, but good luck to have them within a week or two of October before they're gone.
Right.
So, and other than that, it relies on us, and that's what I'm not gonna sit here and feel bad because the amount of time, the amount of effort that I put in to build a better, um, management program for my deer, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, "Oh, people get mad at that one. I'm gonna take that one off my list and not do it." Because I mean, like you said, it's legal. So yeah, that's what I was kind of rolling on. That was we don't have these ag fields that you guys have. You know, we don't have the mile sections of it. So in our
Yeah.
areas. So let's roll on the next question. You see CJ Alexander up in Ohio um, having all these issues with we don't know what's going on. We know his deer's confiscated. We know by reports um, that he might have not had permission, and up there you have to have written permission in your pocket.
Hmm.
Um, Anytime you go anywhere, apparently, I didn't know that. I've watched a podcast. He's in podcast with our buddies saying he did it legally, but they aren't releasing a lot of the information to back the situation for him. And so I'm going with that. Um, did you ever at one point um, have an issue with the State Department questioning you? And I know you answered it with you had a guy roll up and automatically right there, you got to talk to him. But have you had any more issues?
No, and I think it was kind of because after I harvested the deer, I had several different people I found out were hunting the same deer,
Uh huh.
and I don't know the whole story about the Ohio buck that you mentioned, but I do know that it was kind of that deal. Like a guy,
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
miles away had pictures of it, and then he checks it in a different county or something along those lines. Um, I didn't really have that because I was hunting a small property, so obviously the deer wasn't just staying right there. And
Right.
after the fact, I found out that other people had pictures of him as far away as 2 miles from that property. So, I mean, if it ever did come to a legality issue, I could pull these pictures. Hey, this guy sent it to me here. Which I had pictures on my phone, so I was never worried about it. I mean, I had over 100 pictures of this deer
Yeah. Yeah.
on my property that I had permission to hunt. So that was never an issue for me. And I think the people that I showed after the fact, I showed people pictures of the deer and whatnot, and so everybody kind of knew. So it wasn't that rumor never did get spread about this deer, to my knowledge, anyway. And then me getting checked, the night of, uh, kind of, I don't know if anybody reached out to our local game warden about it, but I do know that he checked me out the first night. So I felt like I was
That-
kind of I wasn't too worried about any legality issues coming up.
That's wild to me. Like, I, I I never want to go to another. I do. I do. Don't let me. I. You'll get this when I'm saying it. I don't want to go to a different state and harvest a big deer because with what's happening, I mean, you can look up story after story after story. You harvest the deer, if you don't have any history with it, it's getting taken away, and you're going to get questioned if it's anything over 200 inches. And it's sad because Oklahoma and me and or Gunner and I, when he shot his deer, we never got questioned of oh, this was taken legal. Everyone was like, "Holy cow!" celebrating it, and and
Yep.
I think we are lucky for being in from Oklahoma and being in that situation. But you
Yep.
hear about Ohio all the time, people getting hammered. You hear people, Nebraska is bad. You shoot a deer there, you're getting your deer. They're coming to see if you baited in Nebraska instantly.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's unreal. And even if he's lying or not, I think he'll come out. And if he's my theory is on him, if he's lying, get him in trouble. If he's not, CJ needs to do something to towards them for treating him the way he did because that's unfair. And
Yeah.
it's just unreal how people get treated over harvesting a big deer anymore, and
It is.
how political it is. You know, you look
It
at the
is.
king buck, you look at, is it Rompella or I might not say it right. You look at all these stories.
Yeah.
You look at the story of the typical or the non-typical record in Oklahoma and not start questioning stuff. You know, that deer was shot in the 70s. The guy got taken away because they don't know if he had permission. He was hunting with a friend, shot the deer. I don't know what happened between then, got the deer confiscated, and it was a while before he got that deer back. And I think it was like 20 or 30 years later before he even became in our record book. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's unreal with if you don't have any history with the deer, you better be ready for the ringer because you're gonna get put and it just gets me so fired up thinking about that.
Yeah. And you know, it is crazy I never did think about that, like you said. If I was just sitting there, one random afternoon, this deer walks by and I shoot him, then the first picture on my camera is the day I shot him, or not even the first picture because where I shot the deer, he wasn't even on camera frame yet. So like you said, then all my neighbors come out and they're like, "Oh, I have pictures here and I have pictures here. He
Mhm.
had to have been across, he had to have been trespassing." I could see that, especially how cameras are nowadays. You have a deer, especially okay, so a deer in a rut. Uh,
Yeah.
so what you have pictures of this deer. He gets on a hot doe and he runs 3 miles down the road. You're sitting there and he runs by you, you shoot him. Yeah, you never had a picture of him, but I mean you shot him on your place. So now you like you said, what do you have to go get the game warden, hold the game warden's hand and show him the blood trail? I mean,
Oh, you're gonna have to. I mean,
what do you that's crazy to think.
and that's what, I think about Gunner's deer. Like I have pictures rolling up on it and it laying there, and I'm like, if we didn't have history with that, like the smart thing to do now is if you harvest one, get the game warden. Luckily you had one drive by and you had pictures, but if
Yeah.
I ever harvest one to that abilities, which I don't think I ever will, but there is probably a point, blah, blah, blah percentage I could, I'm calling the game warden, getting them there. Because I'm
Yeah.
not, and I'm not going through, I might not even leave the stand. I might just sit there and be, hey, Gunner, you go get them and bring them to me because I'll drop you the pin because I'm not going through that because that is the if it's illegal, you need to go through it, but not, we're all
Yeah.
we're all innocent and proven guilty supposedly. But now it's you're
Exactly.
guilty until you're proven innocent, and that is not right.
Yeah,
So
it's a wild world now. And that's another point. And I think Cameron Haynes. I was just watching something with him the other day. He goes on pretty good tangents about it. You know, the anti-hunters are winning because
oh yeah.
the anti-hunters they're all on the same boat.
Yep.
They don't care if it's bears or deer or elk. They don't want hunting. Period. And you got us. Even just in the whitetail community, like we were talking about, you got whitetail hunters talking crap about other whitetail hunters because we're hunting over corn. You got elk hunters talking about whitetail hunters because it's too easy to set over corn. It's too easy to kill a whitetail. Come kill a elk or come kill a mule deer out west. And whitetail hunters, well, we anybody can go out and shoot a dumb mule deer. That's why they have to have draw tags. If they weren't
Yeah.
draw tags, they'd be extinct. And and then it's all it every hunting community, whether it's deer, mule deer, whitetail, elk, whatever, everybody's against each other. And then so like Cameron Haynes said, he's like the anti-hunters are winning. They're
Yep.
winning right now until we can all just decide, hey, if you want to hunt with a gun, hunt with a gun, hunt with a bow, hunt with a bow, hunt with a crossbow, hunt with a crossbow. As long as we're all on the same, we need to get on the same boat because if we're not, then like you just said, the the reason for the whole issue, like in Ohio and Nebraska and stuff, is because the anti-hunters are so vocal. You know,
Yep.
if a big deer is taken illegally, they're going to be the first ones to jump out there and showcase it. That all hunters are bad. They're poaching these deer or reaping these deer, or however you want to word it. But it, that sorry to get off on a
No,
tear,
no.
No,
but I think
yeah.
hunters are hurting each other more than we're helping the
Yeah.
industry.
Well, it's like, and again, I'll let you speak for a second, but it's like when you see, I have this in my mind, I want to get it out now. It's like when you see a fight, everyone around there is hollering, fight, fight, fight. They're not getting hurt saying that. It's the people in the middle of the fight that are throwing the punches. They're actually getting hurt. And that's what, everyone around us, the anti-hunters that don't want us to hunt, are hollering fight. Well, then if we're mad at another hunter, we're back there hollering fight, and now your own people are in there fighting, and that's what it boils down to. And it's we're never going to be able to get along and get over things if it's constantly everyone hollering fight, even though you should be on the same team.
I think we all need to start like collectively caring about certain issues, like politically even. You look in like
Yeah, oh,
Colorado
100%.
and like so this is where I find that we have issues is there's certain, everybody has their niche. Like everyone's like, I love to whitetail hunt, turkey hunt, I'm not much of a waterfowler. I love to waterfowl hunt upland, I'm not much of a deer hunter. And so like when something happens to the deer hunters, all these waterfowl and upland guys are like, I don't really care about that. If something happens to
Yep.
waterfowlers, all these deer hunters like, I don't really care about that. It doesn't affect me. But when it starts affecting you, they're vocal. And we need to start really deciding to kind of all collectively be like, no, that's that's hunting still. Just like Colorado, they
Yep.
started wording things and stuff about the mountain lion stuff. They want to throw in this bill, oh, you can't hunt lynx. They haven't been able to hunt lynx for how ever. It's always
Yep.
been a thing. You can't hunt lynx there, but they want to throw it in the bill and make it sound better. So they're trying
Yep.
to. And Cameron Haynes, actually, I listened to this on a podcast the other day. It's like they're taking like a 10% harvest right now on cats up there, those mountain lions.
Yep.
It's not even putting a dent in them, and they're worried about harvest statistics, and it's not even affecting population.
Exactly.
So, and it's like people that don't necessarily, aren't running dogs or aren't hunting those mountain lions. They're not like they're, oh, that doesn't really affect me. When in the grand scheme of things, they should understand the trickle down effect. That's going to not affect you now, but wait till
Wait till
a bunch of mountain lions or a bunch of wolves are there, and there's no harvest management plan for any predators there. And Colorado one day decides we're just going to be a naturalist state, no more hunting. All of our predators
Exactly.
can
it's
control our
going there.
wildlife.
It's going
Yeah.
there. There's no way around it. I don't care who says anything. It's going there. I mean,
And
they're going to cut down out of staters coming. They're going to cut down tags, make everything not over the counter, even for people or in residents. That's the word I'm looking for. They're doing all this stuff to slowly. Once you give something away, it's easier to give more away, and
that's exactly
that's
where I
what.
was going.
Yeah, and it's exactly happening in front of our eyes, and we're all like, "Oh, they let wolves out?" Like, I mean, most of us don't like it, and I still don't like it. And I would love to have someone on here tell me different, but you do not let something that needs a biologist involved to tell you yes or no, and take it to the general public to vote on. No,
Yeah.
that's why we have governments. They get together, which if you love them or hate them, which we all have our 2 cents on them, we have them put together to make decisions. That's why you have the wildlife departments. You don't have the wildlife departments to not make the decisions because you put your best people forward in those departments because you trust them, and then you're like, oh well, we'll take a vote, and then you take the vote wins, and then you go release the wolves in the areas that the people voted against it, and it's like
Yeah.
it's so broken, it's so messed up, and we have to flip it, or our kids and our grandkids might not even get the experiences we have.
No, that's what's going in Oklahoma. We need to pay attention. I think luckily, I don't know. Well, I say luckily, we'll see. But I have a decent wildlife department,
Yep.
and but I think Oklahoma and Texas, we're going to be okay. But man, you do need to look at your liberal states, your Democrat states. I mean, and it's sad. Like Colorado, I've never met a single person from the state of Colorado that that would is any different than you and I.
Yeah, absolutely, we have
Uh,
friends up there now.
outside of Denver, I'm sorry, outside of
Yeah.
Denver,
Yeah.
I haven't met anybody that's different than you and I. So
Yep.
you have 10% of the state runs the entire state and
Yep.
thinks for everybody else. That's just like Illinois. The times I've been to Illinois hunting, um, they're same as you and I. I mean, they're just as down home as you and I,
Mhm.
and they hate Chicago with a passion. The people that I talk to. But states like that, you got Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Illinois,
California.
um, California. Hell, it's gone, but there's no saving it. Um, but those states right there, like you said, it starts with draw tags, no
Mhm.
over the counter. Then, like you said, then it goes to no predator hunting. Then it goes to limiting total tags, and then like you said, then you just do away with hunting in general. And I think everybody needs to really pay attention to what's going on and think, well, thank God I don't live in Colorado. No, it's you're one vote away from it happening in any state, unfortunately.
You can say that. You can say thank God I don't live in Colorado, but look at any realtor around here and see what states majority are buying our houses and moving here.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
just
married
take
to
a
one.
little look.
Yeah, I'm married to one, and and she sells a lot of property to people from California, and a couple, matter of fact, like you said, a couple from Colorado. So yeah, it's the people like you and I. They're trying to get to better places, but yeah, it is like you said. It goes back to all the hunters need to band together. Just quit bickering about the little things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're always gonna the human nature is to bicker, but there's some stuff, the bigger pictures on stuff, it doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter how you harvest an animal, it doesn't matter how you do this. And because end of the day, you guys, if they get put in y'all situations, they're gonna be saying what we're saying right here.
Yep.
And so yeah. So let's kind of move on from that. We're kind of drawing this long, which is fine, which is great because they're great topics. But I kind of want to get in a couple other topics that we've talked about. So I want to run this across your mind. What do you think on the scoring of deer? And I'm going to back this up with this. Um, Gunner shoots this awesome deer. Um, it is what it is. All right. I mean, it's a magnificent deer. You shoot a magnificent deer. But this is where I get very confused. Um, I'm not huge into scoring. I don't know what that deer scored. I don't know what my biggest deer I have scored. And I do want to know, but I kind of don't at the same time. But you look at the state record typical, okay? It scores bigger non-typical, but the guy put it in as typical, so now it's a record. All right. So I went up this weekend and asked a game warden. I said, "Hey, how can they, how can they do that?" Because in my mind, there should be a fine line of, all right, here it has to go non-typical. Like a typical looks like your hands, like it should look like that. It shouldn't have any trash.
Yeah. It's like
And
gunner's deer.
yeah, and Gunner's deer has some points at the bottom. And I'm like, so if your deer, for instance, could have beat the typical record, why didn't you put that deer in? Even though when I look at it, I see non-typical. And
Exactly.
so I did not know, and I've hunted for a lot of time that there was not a standard until this weekend, and now I'm like fired up even more. If we're gonna have records, and if records are made to beat eventually, then why do we not have better standards or a line that you have to follow like everything else we have to do? And kind of what's your thoughts on this whole scoring deal? You talk about nets, you talk about gross, and what are your 2 cents on it?
Well, I really actually hadn't thought about that. Like you said, I mean, it never crossed my mind once, um, that that this deer would even be considered typical until, like you said, last weekend. I go up there and they're like, "Oh yeah, you was almost 180-inch typical." I was like, "Wow!" Like I didn't even think of it being anything or close to a typical. But yeah, I think, like you said, I think if you have a certain Well, now I was going to say if you have a certain number of inches of abnormal points, it should be non-typical. But I mean, if I guess if you have enough deductions, I guess where does that number come into to make it a non-typical?
Yeah.
Because like you said, like this deer's got 7 inches of deductions, and Gunner said his had more than that. So like, where do you determine? I guess if you go off of I guess you would have to word it as any point not coming off of the actual main beam is a non-typical point.
Well, it's worded like that technically.
Oh, okay. But
And
I don't know, and as far as the scoring deal goes, man, I don't know. My deal is you get the deer scored, and however many total inches of antler that deer has, that's the number.
yeah.
Um,
And,
that's what I think should be in the book. And I after looking at some of them deer up there this weekend, it's like I don't know. I don't want to talk crap on anybody, but I had so many people walk by and look at this deer and look up at the archery record, look at my deer and look at the archery record and go, "How's that deer bigger than that deer?" And I'm like, "Hell, I don't know, brother. You tell me."
yeah.
I guess it's whoever's reading the tape that day.
Yeah, and that's what I got into the whole spill of people getting treated wrong, and um, and so that's kind of where I really jumped in the rabbit hole when it comes to scoring deer, because I don't know. I know I have a lot of friends that every deer they shoot they get scored. If it's 105, if it's 145, they want to know, like they have to know, and I'm like, and that's cool. They're like, oh, that one, but they do it more as a way to like justify and like take in, for what they want to do management wise. But
Yeah,
like, if we're gonna have records to beat, there has to be a line, because that deer would have gone 223 inches, which is, or 224 inches is what I found online, which would have been 7 inches smaller than the one sitting over you.
yeah,
But it went 197 because it goes typical. And another thing that happened, and this is another thing that aggravates me, is um, how people manipulate and use these deer, like um, for like free advertisement. There's people out there that will post it, a big deer gets killed, and it's a giant. Like I see it and I'm like, holy cow, but they're like new state record. And I'm like, come on now. Like, don't, that deer is a monster. I may never see one like that, but don't take away from the thing. Don't. And there was this whole report like after Gunner shot his, that this other deer the year later is going to beat it. But you look at it, it's a mainframe 8 or 10 point with kickers everywhere. And I'm like, how can you justify that deer is a typical compared to what a typical should be if you
yeah,
look up what the definition of typical is, And but then that deer, it's crazy, when it came to scoring that deer, you never heard about it again. And I'm like, all right, giant deer, stop using it for political and getting bigger just because you can say, hey, it might be the state record, because then that's just a key word for everyone to look up and then see
yeah,
what names are attached to benefit from that. And I'm not going to drop names because I don't think they're bad people. I just don't like how I see all these things for that. And I'm like, we got to have a standard, or you got to have a line somehow. I don't know how you're going to do it, because Boone and Crockett's been around it forever.
yeah,
I think non-typical, I, I'm not really, opposed of having whatever it scores, it scores. Typical, you might want to do something because it is a typical buy, but still,
right.
I look at the gross. That's what I look at, and that
Yeah,
tells
and I
me.
think and on Gunners, on your deer, like what did like I think you made mention to me the other day. What did they count on yours as a abnormal point? Because your deer, to me, when I see pictures of it and I seen it in person finally, like that's as perfect of a rack as I could get.
I actually got him back here. Let me run and go get him because this will be. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll answer that kind of for him real quick. The abnormal points are, there's 3 points at the base that are like an inch and a half,
Okay.
and they like took charge of that. Like you would think there was 20 inches of deductions laying down there, but you'll see it right here.
Please.
Be hard to get in the screen.
Hey.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, you might want to scoot back. I was telling them that the points at the base is what
Yeah.
everyone was freaking out at.
I don't know what that was, but you see kind of this stuff right here,
There's
Okay.
3 of them,
and
right?
then there's 2, and then there's this third one right here.
Yeah.
Try to turn him, kind of see it right there, and then like every one of these, the big deduction was this right here, the difference between right there,
Yeah.
right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot of it, it's just it has so it just mirrors itself. So every little discrepancy got knocked, and so
Okay.
it was like it's such an awesome 8x8, but like every time was just a slight discrepancy that got taken off, and that's really how it had so many deductions.
Yeah.
But it dried a crazy amount. Taylor can talk about that.
Yeah, so it's an 8x8. That's an incredible deer. You'll never see one. You might Let me phrase it. You might see one eventually, but you also it's a funny thing because you shoot this crazy deer, but you also shoot yourself in the foot because if every point's off an inch, there's 16 inches. And it's
Yeah.
crazy to think about that. So if it was build a deer, you're gonna want to build it wide. And you want to build 10 points because
Yeah.
and that's what most records are. They're 10 point, really wide. And on typical side,
The different discrepancy, how much it dried, the
oh
discrepancy
yeah,
from the green to the dry score.
it was like no, it was oh my
It
gosh,
was a
like
lot of
over
inches.
20 inches. And that's another thing I don't understand. I really need to look into the science of that. I don't understand how stuff can dry so much.
I didn't either. That's what everybody asked me on my deer was like, what did it dry? What did it, how much did he lose when he dried? Which I guess I don't understand the biology of the horns because in my opinion, like that horn is hard. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have blood flow going through it. So like how would a horn shrink? You know, I measured my deer the day after I shot it at 230. And then now the backwoods show was, 5 months later and it scored 231 on
Yeah.
their tape. So it had actually, I shorted myself somewhere when I scored it, um, compared to what they got. So to me, I don't think it had any shrinkage at all.
Yeah, well, looking at that thing, I can kind of see areas you might be able to short yourself an inch or two with all the
Yeah.
points. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No,
And
but
I
yeah,
did it
it's
the most.
Yes.
I scored him out as the smallest I could,
yeah.
just in
Mhm.
hopes that somebody else would get a better score.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't get it. I need to look into it. I don't want to say it's whoever holds the tape of the day or that day, but it's just you
I'll
would
say
think
it.
with yeah with how today's times are, you would think we would be able to have a laser or something to be able to score it, and even a computer. I don't know. My I love scores. All right, I like to know scores of other people's deer, but I don't want to know mine because I'm going to be hard on myself. And I also think a lot of times people look at scores and then take away from that deer. I mean, you're looking at a 6.5-year-old monarch that made it to an 8x8 that lived for 6.5 years. You know,
Yeah.
if he's a 188 or he's a 205, he still made he still made it from 5.5 to 6.5, heavily hunted around us. You look at your deer, you shot him off 40 acres, and there was people, you said 2 miles. I don't know if you told me, if I read it somewhere, 6 miles. Someone had a picture of him,
Yeah.
and if that scored whatever 248 to break the state record on a non-typical in Oklahoma, I'm not going to sit here and look at that deer and think more highly or less of it because I'm sitting here pretty much wish I had a napkin around me to wipe the drool off my face because I'm like, look at that thing. I mean, it's unreal. And that's what I think
Yeah.
a lot of people do is they get behind these scores and they take away from the deer. I mean, you look at these two deer, I might as well hide this one because that's a 7.5-year-old deer that never got, or I'm sorry, a 6.5-year-old deer that never had it in him to get big. I mean, he went
Yep.
from 5.5 to this little thing not even past his ears to that, and I'm like, "Holy cow, look what he did." He was a nothing that I watched and I was laughing at, and then he came out that next year. I never saw a picture of him, and I'm happy with them. You look at
Yep.
my other deer that's 7.5. We had him from 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. Disappeared at 6.5. I thought he was gone, like you thought your deer was. Comes back, and he was a 10 point, real tall, real narrow, and now he's a non-typical, and he's gonna go 188 or 180s to 190s, and it's like if I get him scored and he goes 176, I don't care, but everyone else can be like, "Oh, I thought you said he's a 180." And
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
"Well, I did get him scored by a guy one time, but that guy got in trouble for lying on score sheets, so I'm not gonna say what he scored." So, because I know when time comes, if I tell everyone what that deer scored and what I think he's actually gonna score is about 11 to 12 inches off, smaller, and I'm like, I'm not gonna tell people that because then they're gonna look at that deer different, but that deer survived for 7.5 years, and then I was a lucky one, you know?
Yep.
And that's the reason why I hate scores.
Hey, I'll say this for your viewers. Like it goes back to old Uncle Ted. Uncle Ted said a long time ago, "For God's sake, shoot the spike.
Yep.
If that's what you want to kill, if that's what you want to kill on your property, shoot it. Don't worry about numbers. Like everybody, we're bouncing a bunch of numbers around between all these deer, and if you have a 6 year old, 6.5 year old 6 pointer, shoot him.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you have a 6 year old 8 pointer, shoot him. That's all
Yep.
he's going to be. He's not going to go from 6 to 7 and blow up. I mean, a 6 year old deer is a mature deer in my books.
Oh,
Uh,
100%.
I mean, none of us three have thousands of acres that we can manage
Yep.
deer on. Um, and I seen a biologist the other day. I wish I could remember his name. And he said, if you're hunting a small property, if you're hunting under 500 acres, you're not managing deer. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Them deer aren't staying on your property.
Yep.
So
And the biggest cover up word in our time is a cool buck. Everyone kills a cool buck, but hey, I'm gonna tell you
oh,
something. You better harvest its mom. You better go back and find out every family member it has and take them out. Good luck
yeah,
finding that because the cool buck is just a way to someone to harvest a deer that made them happy, and tell everyone else is a cool buck because they don't want to um, say that, or they're like, oh, I was happy shooting this 125-inch deer. Uh, Be
exactly.
happy. If it makes your heart beat, do it. And I said this
Do it.
yesterday. Copy and paste me. Do it if it makes you happy. If you're my neighbor and you're listening and you're like, oh, he likes to shoot mature deer. If a 2.5-year-old comes out and your heart's beating and you're excited, don't think about me. Don't shoot it. And that's why it's aggravating too.
Go back to the coal buck stuff. If you understand how deer move, they're pros at not inbreeding. So what does that
Yeah.
mean? When they get born and everything, they're not sticking around. They're
Yeah,
leaving. They're going miles, 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 miles. And
yeah,
so it's to say you're completely controlling genetics on a place, just like you have a bracket on genetics, you're just lying to yourself.
Yeah.
exactly.
I have two more questions and we'll wrap this up. And this one, we kind of talked about it. We talked about it yesterday, and we talked about it. Me and you talked about it on the phone. A lot of people are comparing our cell cams now to live scope, and I think a lot of that goes to old timers stuck in their old ways that they didn't have the tools we have now. And it's boiling down to that is that they're saying that stuff. But what's your outlook? Do you think that today's cell cams can be equivalent to what the fishing world is using as a Garmin live scope?
Well, I'll say this: after spending 4.5 hours on the lake today, live scope don't catch fish either. Because I got one, and
Yeah.
I got skint plumb up, son. All I caught today was a sunburn. Uh, and I chased them around. I chased them around on live scope all day, and I couldn't pay one to buy it. But anyhow, back to your question: does it make things easier? Yes, but like the big deal right now in the BASS and MLF, I follow a lot of those guys.
Yep.
You know, I think Ben Millenick, he posted it, that the old timers that we grew up watching, they always talked about adapt and use the best technology available. And and you a change to your surroundings and what's going on in the industry. And yeah, if you don't have live scope and fishing in a competitive setting nowadays, yeah, you're not competitive, but it's available and it's legal to use, so use it. Cell cameras are available and they're legal to use them. But it's not, you're comparing apples to oranges, because like I could set on that live scope today and stare at this fish, and I'm right on top of him, and I could chase him around the cove, but can't make him bite. Um, but like I think you said it yesterday on your live, maybe, we're not. You can compare live scope to drones. Like, yeah, if we can run thermal drones around your property and chase deer around with a thermal drone, that's more comparable to live scope than a cell camera is, because yeah, I get a picture on my cell cam. I'm only 2 miles away, but that deer was moving when he walked in front of it. By the time I get my stuff on and get over to my property, that deer's a half mile away.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I had times with this deer right here. I'm setting at my lease 15 miles away, and I get a picture of this deer standing there in front of my blind, but I know the wind's wrong, or I would have been hunting that stand anyway. Um, I just I don't think people are using it, and I could be completely wrong. I don't think people are using cell cameras that way, where they're sitting in the pickup 200 yards away and they're waiting on a picture. If they don't get a picture, they don't even get out of the truck. I don't think that's happening. And I hope not, but that's what I don't agree with that if that's how you're using it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think y'all were talking about, if you go hop a pond dam and shoot one. I hope that's not the way, and we need to speak pretty quietly about it, because that's just going to give your legislature something else to use,
Yeah.
to try to outlaw them. They hear somebody like us talking about, well, they're just sitting in the truck waiting on a deer to show up in front of a camera, and then they're going to jumping over a brush pile and shooting them. But I don't think it's comparable. But I think you need to use the best technology in the game. I mean, I seen the other day T-Bone Turner. He had one of the original trail cameras that had film in it,
Yeah.
and it looked like it weighed 10 pounds. Um, I'm sure there was people back then, and that might have been in the 90s. Um, I'm sure there was old timers back then that called that cheating.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just like in fishing, when the first fish finder came out with color display, I'm sure them old timers, they called that cheating.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be, you got old school guys are always going to say the next best thing's cheating.
Yep.
I mean, look at a bear bow, the first, or where I think it was either Pearson or Bear came out with the compound. Look at that compared to freaking Matthews lift
Yep.
today. I mean, and don't say that that's not cheating.
Look at our muzzle loaders.
So,
Flintlock
oh,
to one
yeah,
that can shoot 400 to 500 yards. I mean, and if you said we need to be quiet lip on it. If you guys want to fight that, trail cams are the live scope. I'll tell you what the live scope is. It's the people driving around on the roads popping them out of their windows. So if you want to fight something, there it is. Get
yeah,
the people doing it wrong, not for the people trying to do it right. So
exactly.
I'll fill that answer with that. Is I know people that drive around, and if that's their way to hunt, I guess I don't agree with it. I don't think a lot of you
Yeah,
should not be able to harvest a deer shooting out your window, and that's why there's many states that rule against it. But
yeah,
when I'm hunting and I can see the trucks that are doing it, they're driving by, I'm like, here we are. That's the
oh
people that
yeah,
you need to fight, not the people that are watching a camera to see what deer are there. That's
yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah. It's that whole comparison's apples to oranges. But I think you use whatever technology is best available. That's my
Yep.
answer.
So let's wrap this up with this. So what's you're gonna look out with this deer? Do you have more shows you're gonna go with him? Have you been invited anywhere? Do you have any plans with taking your deer mount anywhere else?
No, I really haven't. I haven't been invited really anywhere else. Everybody's asked me like, "Oh, has Bass Pro called you or Cabela's called you to make a replica or to buy it and all that?" And the answer is no. Nobody's hit me up as far as that goes. The guy from the Backwoods Show hit me up to bring it up, and that was really it. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I love showing it off. I love telling the story. I mean, I think it's such a beautiful deer. I think anybody that wants to come see it can. But and I'd love to take it around and show it off. But the answer your question, no. And I mean, it's I guess nobody's fault. I
I'm
just don't
sorry.
know if a lot of people I've talked to in the industry, they're just like, hey, how your deer hasn't got that much publicity, and I was like, I mean, it's got quite a bit. I mean, Field and
Yeah.
Stream, North American Whitetail Cover, and Buckmasters. I mean, that's about as much publicity as you can get for one.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you shoot this deer like this, you get to tell an awesome story. Um, and I know the answer because I've seen your social media, but I want to ask you this. Are you going to change the way you hunt? Are you going to, are you going to be like, I'm only shooting this one or bigger? Or are you just going to enjoy the outdoors and keep doing what you're doing?
I got a funny story about that. So, uh, we were my buddy's dad that we're on the lease together down south of my house here. He had killed a nice deer this past season, and we were standing at his tailgate talking, and he's killed a lot of really nice deer. I mean,
Mhm.
so it wasn't nothing special to him, the deer that he killed, but he was happy with it. Going back to that. So anyhow, we're standing at the tailgate. He's like, "Well," he said, "I'll give you some old man advice." He said, "You got to start back over with us common folk." He said, he said, "You can't be chasing that next 230." He said, "You gotta start somewhere." And the very next day, I shot one that scored 152. Finish the story out. The stand I was hunting wasn't able to hunt with a bow. So when I pulled the trigger on that deer, I had no idea he was even close to that. Like I just knew he was an old deer, and I'd been seeing pictures of him. So I
Mhm.
knew he was an older deer, 6+ year old deer. So I was the one I was going to harvest, and he ended up scoring 152.
Wow, that's a great year. Gunner had
So
a
I
great
had
year.
a great year.
Yeah, Gunner shot that 8x8 and then turned around and shot a giant 8 point the same year, and so
Wow.
he had a great year too. And that's what I applaud of him is, a lot of people are like, oh, he's ruined for his life and all that. Well, I'm going to tell you guys something now. I watched Gunner shoot that deer that year, and then the next year shoot a 120-inch 8 point, and was still excited as he ever was as if he shot that 8x8. So, and
Hey, I'm
and I
telling.
think and I feel like that's the way you are too.
Hey, I'm telling you, when that when a couple of days after I killed this deer, matter of fact, I got right back in the woods. My next day's off, I was right back out there, and the deer that I was talking about that I actually ended up killing with a rifle, um, I, he was coming in. I had my bow with me that day, different stand, and man, when I seen him coming in, I was shaking just as bad as when I shot this deer. I mean,
That's
if you
awesome.
if you have it in you, if you have it in you, you have it in you. I hope everybody that hunts has that same feeling, whether it's a doe or a 230-inch deer. I hope you have the same feeling.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Ethan. It's been a great
Yes.
pleasure. Like I said, I'm thankful for No Gunner like the way I do and be a part of his story, and then being able to build a platform to be able to connect guys with you to hear your story, and it's just a God given deal that I've got. So I thank you for your time. Great deer. If you're ever down in the Tulsa Morrison area where we live, holler. We always have boats. We're always doing something, but
Yeah.
definitely thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
All
we
right, thank
appreciate
you
it, man.
guys. I sure appreciate it. I've had a great
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Yep.
and good luck this next year. Kill another big one, and if you don't kill another big one, you want to come on, holler. You have my number.
Kill what makes you
Yes,
happy.
sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
See you guys. Thank you.